This is a necessity in sewing. We need fabric, but we also need thread. Everybody has their opinion about thread. I'm going to talk about mine. Let's dive in. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Trisha, your pattern nerd friend, owner of Creative Costume Academy. We talk all things sewing, pattern making, and fitting here on this corner of the internet. And today we're going to be talking about thread, because you absolutely cannot sew without it. So I often get asked, what is my favorite kind of thread? Is this the type of thread that would be good for whatever project? So I wanted to weigh in on my opinion. I usually use a certain type of thread and it doesn't work in every instance, but I have a hack for you that I'm going to be sharing later on in the video. First of all, let's talk about thread. There's lots of different companies. We have Coats & Clark all-purpose thread, Mettler silk finish. This is a Gutermann Mara thread that comes in this kind of spool. We also have the Superior thread. We have this kind of Mettler. We have Gutermann, which comes like this, which actually, cool thing about this one is you could open up the cap and you could put your needles in there. I learned that like way later in life. Isn't that cool? There's also woolly nylon thread and stretch threads, other thread on cone just for your serger. And then there's this kind of thread, which comes on a wooden spool. How do you know what is the right kind of thread for you and what is my opinion? It really depends on what it is that I'm trying to sew. These different threads that I just showed you have their different purpose. Now, I want to let it be known, I am absolutely not a thread snob. I'm a girl who just uses what I have to get the job done, number one. But hey, if anyone wants to sponsor me or PatternCon with any of these brands, I'm all ears. Hit me up down below. So some of these are a little bit thicker and different dimensions, and that is better for top stitching. Specifically, this kind with the wooden spool is very thick, and I usually get this kind of thread for my denim top stitching, but not for sewing pieces together. And then we have the woolly nylon and the stretch thread. If you've been around for a while, you'll know that my background is in making theatrical costumes for big theatrical productions. So Cirque du Soleil and doing stuff with stretch was part of my normal everyday life. So I have tried these stretch threads and woolly nylons. It's not a make or break for me. As I said in the beginning, it's kind of like, what do I need to get the job done? And do I have the color and do I have enough of it to finish the job? If not, then what do I go to? One thing I do want to mention, while I'm a girl that can make almost anything work and have had to many times, if you are working with a thread spool and as you're pulling off the thread, you can just snap it super easily, it might be really bad thread, or it could be dry rot, like it's just old and it's no longer going to work for you. If that is happening to you, ditch that thread, go buy some new thread. Now, another thing that you may or may not know about me is that I use mostly industrial machines. And if you may have noticed, my sergers especially use these big cone threads. They're set up with a post so that the thread goes fed through, up through a little feeder so that it can come off of the spool easily and then go down into the machine. If most of my projects are going to be using both the sewing machine and the serger, then why wouldn't I get big cone serger thread for all of my projects and just go ahead and use that kind of thread for the sewing together as well as the serging? That way I can make sure it's the same color, and if I have enough spools, then I don't have to worry about running out. Now, working with a serger, these machines are set up perfectly to use cone thread, and that's what they're happy with most. You can still use that woolly nylon thread. The few times that I have used it in the past, I was told to only use it in the loopers, so the two that go underneath, and then the needle thread could stay single, but it obviously works for this machine. And if you're working with an industrial, these cone threads work pretty well as well, because what they can do is they pull from the top of the spool as I'm sewing, and it works really well. Now I can use some of these other thread brands with the industrial machine too, because this one, when it's sitting on the post, this one can easily be pulled up and used the same way with the industrial machine, and it's set up, it works really well. But a spool kind of like this, sometimes it gets caught on that little nick that's supposed to hold your thread, and it can get caught and cause some issues. So both of these I thread through the machine a little bit differently, and I can still make them work with the industrial machines. But if I already have the cone thread, why not use the cone thread, since I'm gonna have to get that same color for my serger likely anyway. You can see this style of thread works fine on this machine, and I don't have many hangups. And even this thread can work and does work a lot of the time, but you might even see it's kind of jumping as it's going around the top of the spool. And I have had it where it gets stuck and this whole thing lifts off. It can be problematic. So here's a way that you can try and see if it works better if you're in this situation. So instead of using this spool where the thread has to go up and go up into the hook here, I can take it and have it not go up and through the hook and have it go directly into the machine. And we can sew like this. But actually, me just doing this, even though this is pulling off more like a regular machine, it's causing some tension issues down here. So you want to really see what your machine likes better and how it likes to feed it better, which is why I'm not usually drawn to these most of the time. But in a pinch, if it's the color I need, I will make it work. Now, I know that most of my followers and subscribers use a domestic machine, but if you're using a domestic serger or cover stitch machine, then you're gonna use those large cone threads as well. So I have learned a way to use your cone thread with your domestic machine. Let's talk about it. There's a couple. So now we're in my upstairs sewing area where I have a domestic Bernina 1008. I love her, but I still majority have cone thread. So this is how I use my cone thread with my domestic machine. So if you were gonna use a normal spool, we would use these pegs up here and they would feed into the machine like this. But when I use my large spool thread, I use this guy. This is my thread spool holder. So as you can see, it makes it so that the cone can still sit on a peg and the thread can be pulled up. It's got a little dealy bob to feed it into the machine like it would if it had a normal spool, but you can use the cone threads. Now, this one was specifically made for me by a friend. You can pick these up. I mean, we used to be able to get them at So Sad Joann's, but you can also order them on places online as well. Now, what do you do if you don't have one of these cool things? You can grab a handy mug. This is a great one from Terrence William Designs. Shout out T, I love this mug. It could be any mug as long as your thread spool can fit in it. It allows the mug to hold the spool in place, so even if it moves around, nothing's gonna happen, and you can pull the thread up. Now let me show you how we would thread this. Now with the mug sitting behind the machine, you pull the thread up, and I usually catch it on one of these posts. So it's actually pulling up, but then being caught up here by one of these posts, and then you thread it as normal. As you're sewing, it can pull from the back. So here's a view of what the thread is doing as I'm sewing. It's pulling it up. Now, sometimes when you're sewing this way with the mug, it needs a little bit more distance from the machine to be able to pull off the top even more. So all you gotta do is move the mug down to the bottom over the edge of your table if you can, and then that will give it enough height that it can pull smoothly. And that's the hack if you want to use cone thread with your domestic sewing machine. Well, there you go. It gives you some tips to try whether you're using a cone thread or one of these smaller spool threads with either a domestic or an industrial sewing machine. But as my experience in theater and make it work, the show must go on for most of my career, I am not super picky about what thread I'm using. And I have found that if there's a will, there's a way. And I like to share those tips with you as well. Now, don't get me wrong, there are specific threads that I like for specific purposes, and we didn't dive too much into that today. If you want to learn more about that, let me know. I'd love to hear down in the comments, did any of these tips or ways to use the thread, have you heard of them before? Because it's always cool to share. Maybe you have a tip that I don't know about. Now, if you have not yet heard about PatternCon, first of all, where have you been? Because it's all I've been talking about. I just want to mention it one more time because yes, there is a con for people who love patterns, and it is called PatternCon. We are coming to the near end of our ticket sales. So PatternCon is happening August 1st and 2nd in Atlanta. It is an in-person event, 2 full days, full of classes, keynote speakers like Kenneth King and Cornelius Quiring. And we also got the amazing Yaya Han to come and chat with us about cosplay and how the construction and pattern making works in her world as well. All of that included along with hot meals, tons of prizes. And even though I am super excited about all of those things, the number one thing that is, I think, the biggest draw and the most exciting thing about PatternCon is to be in the room with people who get it. How many of people do you have in your life who get as excited about you are about drafting something, about making something that fits you perfectly, that turns out exactly like what the vision is in your head? And to not only be learning those skills, advancing those skills, networking with people, learning about different resources, but to be in a room with people who actually get it and are that excited. It's just, come and find your people. Come and find your community. We are coming together in August. We would love for you to be there. If you want to find out more about how to join us, hurry, because tickets are going to be closing soon. The information is down below. That's all I have for you today for this week's Tricky Thursday. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time.